Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Conditions for repeal: due diligence has been done, and the time to act is here. Regardless of what critics say, the issue before us has been debated in Congress and reviewed by the Department of Defense. In fact, Mr. Speaker, members of the House have debated repeal for some time. My subcommittee held hearings on the issue. The first of those hearings was on July 23, 2008, actually 15 years after the decision had originally been made, and the second hearing on March 3, 2010. Every member of this body was welcome to attend, though few Republicans actually made the effort to be there at that time. For those of you who weren't there, Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
Chairwoman is correct. The House will be in order. Chairwoman may proceed.
For those of you who weren't there, the takeaway from these hearings was that the current policy does not work for our armed forces and is inconsistent with American values. Next, this House approved language identical to what is before us today as part of the National Defense Authorization Act. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the DoD completed its study on implementing repeal, confirming our troops are ready for repeal. 70% of the force said that repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell will have a positive, a mixed, or no effect on our military. 74% of spouses said that open service would not change their support for their spouse staying in the military. And 92% of uniformed personnel who believe they've served with a gay service member in the past said their unit's ability to work together was, quote, very good. 89% of our warriors on the front lines said the same. In short, service members and their spouses have essentially the same view as the American public. Men and women in uniform who are gay should be allowed to serve openly. And I want to add, Mr. Speaker, that our top civilian and military officials agree with the American people. Secretary of Defense Gates has clearly stated that with careful preparation, repeal poses low risk to the readiness and effectiveness of our forces. Admiral Mullen shares that view. In fact, Secretary Gates' biggest concern is if Congress doesn't act to repeal. Then he points out the courts will impose this change on the Department of Defense, leaving little or no time to prepare and implement the transition plan properly. Now, it's true that the military service chiefs have reservations about the timing of repeal, but they all believe that the language has adequate safeguards and when implemented correctly, can be done and effectively managed. They acknowledge that leadership at all levels will be key. And I have great confidence, Mr. Speaker, in the leaders who are serving in our military and their professionalism. After all, we trust them with decisions about our nation's safety. We can trust them to put this transition into practice in a way that addresses the needs of our force. But we cannot begin this new challenge until we repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Mr. Speaker, change is never easy, but it is rarely as necessary as it is today. In addition to clear statistics in favor of repeal, the survey responses got to what is at the heart of this issue: fairness. Gay and lesbian personnel have the same values toward their service as service members at large. What is that? It's love of their country. It's honor, it's respect, it's integrity, and service over self. In the words of one gay service member, repeal would simply, and I quote, "take the knife out of my back. You have no idea what it is like to have to serve in silence," unquote. If we miss this opportunity to repeal this law, history will judge us poorly for the damage we have done to our nation and our military. I urge members of this House to be on the right side of history and help end "don't ask, don't tell." I reserve the balance of my time.